Okay, Philip Lee returning November 2nd, the day before Election Day 2020. A few topics to talk about today is one, I'm going to be giving a virtual presentation on my book, The Causes of the Civil War, and that will be with the Texas Brigade. I'll put up information about that. Secondly, I wanted to make note that President Trump was campaigning in North Carolina. He said he wants to keep the name Fort Bragg the way it is. I think that took courage. I don't know any other politician that would do that. And of course, it endears me to him for that. I want to talk a little bit about that. And then third, I want to talk about how cancel culture, it really fits into the Trump thing. He can say what he wants because he's a billionaire. But you know, you talk about a guy with 3 children, a wife at home, and he's working at a job, and if he says something favorable about the Confederacy, he could get fired. That's the culture we live in, and that's the culture that I want to see changed. So let me proceed first with the talk that I'm going to be doing. I'll share the screen here with you shortly. There we go. You should be able to see it now. Here's the information on it. Hood's Texas Brigade Association. I'll be lecturing virtually on the causes of the Civil War. It will be a Zoom presentation, so that should all work out just like it works out here. I mean, somebody else will be running it, but I'll be making the presentation. It will be Thursday, November 5th. It'll actually start at 7 p.m. Central Time, which would be 8 o'clock Eastern, and you figured out for the other time zones. That's when it's actually going to start. But if you want to get in time to be sure you don't miss my presentation, the first part of my presentation, log in about 6:45. There's the email of the person you want to contact. Martha Hartzog. Look at that in bold there. m.hartzog @mail.utexas.edu. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this because we need to move on. Perhaps I can bring it up later. Okay. I also want to update you on VMI. This is important. I'm glad that I said yesterday that I want people to, if they're going to be responding to me in any kind of a debatable sense, an argumentative sense or anything like that, I don't mind just if you want to use a pseudonym and just say, hey, great job, something like that. Okay, fine. Doesn't mean much, but fine. If you want to challenge me, then you must use your real name. If you want to criticize me, you must use your real name. If you don't, I'm not going to respond to a pseudonym. Well, 2 people did get back to me, one through my personal email and one through my blog, civilwarchat.wordpress.com. The first one told me 2 of the 16 members of the VMI Board of Visitors resigned rather than to vote unanimously to remove the Stonewall Jackson statue. The second guy told me, and both these guys are VMI graduates. Well, one of them is for sure. The other one is I think an Annapolis graduate, but he's well wired in because he lives in Virginia. The second guy from VMI, who is a VMI graduate, happened to be there the same year as Ralph Northam. He told me that Northam instructed the VMI Board of Visitors, you either vote to remove the Stonewall Jackson statue or we're going to replace you. I'm going to make new nominations for the board, and he makes all of them. And I've got the legislature behind me, and we'll get my new nominations approved. So I don't know whether he could force people to go out of their terms early, but basically that was the message he gave them. If you don't go along with me, you're going to get replaced, perhaps when their term comes up. But anyway, that's that. Trump's statement that he's going to encourage Fort Bragg to keep its name. He says, as long as I'm president, that's what it's going to be, Fort Bragg, and that would apply to the rest of the military bases named for Southerners. As I mentioned, he can do that. An ordinary dad working at a job can't do that. He can't defend the Confederacy. He can't criticize Black Lives Matter. He's likely to lose his job. Then that cancel culture is what is the abomination that has come out of the education system, and it's the culture that we've got right now. And it is just reprehensible. Freedom of speech is a God-given right. The First Amendment of the Constitution is a document that says to the people of America, we are going to protect that God-given right. That's what it is. So I agree with that. To me, and I've lived a long time, I don't recall any time when I've seen censorship as vicious as it is now, and pernicious and just downright wicked. It needs to stop. Or our country's on a one-way ticket to totalitarianism. Well, I want to give you an idea of what it's like, because I've been researching some of the lectures on YouTube by the professors, and one of the young professors has a prestigious book out by a prestigious university press. He is just awful. He demeans the Confederate soldier. And during the interview, he tells the interviewer all the myths about the Confederacy, and you can imagine how he goes on the lost cause myth. So one of the myths is that the Confederate soldier was a great soldier. He wasn't a great soldier. It's not, the fact that the Confederacy lasted 4 years isn't a great deal. We should be asking instead why it didn't last longer. I've heard this argument before. The Revolutionary War, for example, was 8 years. What this guy doesn't say, and what the people making the argument don't say, is that the casualty ratio, or the death ratio of soldiers to the population of the 13 colonies was 1% over 8 years. Over 4 years in the Confederacy, the death ratio was at least 5%, probably higher. I'm comparing the casualties of 300,000 to 6 million whites in the 11 Confederate states. That's 5%. If the casualties were more than 300,000, which more recent research says, then you would take it from there. But over 4 years, half the time of the Revolutionary War, the Confederacy had 5 times the proportional casualties. If we were to have 5% casualties today, you're talking about almost 17 million soldier deaths. You think in the United States today would put up with that? You think with the United States today could survive it? Do you think that the college students that are coming out of college and that would be called into the military forces would have any chance of winning that kind of a war? I mean, they might run into microaggressions about their drill sergeant yelling at them, right? And they'll have to see to it that the drill sergeant is canceled. Do you know right now that more Black and Hispanic females go to college than white males? Something has radically changed. Now, this same guy, the same young professor that I'm talking about, during his presentation, made the remark that the UDC and the Sons of Confederate Veterans are now much more willing to retreat because they just want to save the statues rather than just leave them in place. They're ready to retreat as long as the statues get saved. And he says, you know what changed that? What changed that was the destruction of the United Daughters of the Confederacy building in Richmond during one of the Richmond riots. If you don't know it, the United Daughters of the Confederacy building was new. They put a lot of money into it. It was a beautiful facility. And the thugs broke into it and ransacked it. Not only did they ransack the new building, they found historical original heirlooms that they just destroyed. This guy made the outrageous comment. I don't need to even say outrageous. He made this comment. That was okay. Because when the laws don't give us any way to destroy and remove these awful memorials, we have to use extra legal ways. And I'm thinking as I'm watching it, do you realize that you're saying the same thing that the Southern Ku Klux Klan said from 1868 to 1871, over 3 or 4 years? That's the same excuse that the Ku Klux Klan had. What makes you think you're better? Oh, of course, what he'll say is, oh, I'm doing this for a noble cause. It's still extra legal. Extra legal is just a euphemism for illegal. In other words, he's telling the people that watch the YouTube and the guy that interviewed him, you don't have to obey the law. As long as you do what I think is right, you don't have to obey the law. And it was just so amazing to watch him make these arguments and not realize it was the same argument that the Ku Klux Klan made, and the same argument that the defenders of the Ku Klux Klan made for who knows how long, probably up into the early 20th century. And that's where, of course, they get all the Jim Crow, connection to the Confederacy. What it really is saying is there was something rotten about Reconstruction, aside from the racism, that professors like this guy will not talk about. And that, for example, is the entire region became an internal colony of the United States to be exploited, much like Ireland had been used by the Great Britain. But I just wanted to cover those points. Let me again bring up a couple of books that will help you. One, if you want to understand how Stonewall Jackson, what makes him so revered, or maybe not revered, but respected as a military commander, you'll enjoy my book, The Confederacy at Flood Tide. It covers June 62 to December 62, which I think was the period when they came closest to winning their independence. It's a hardcover book. This covers, this flood tide, this is one of the perspective I have on it. It wasn't just Virginia, and it wasn't just Kentucky. It was Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi, and even the Trans-Mississippi. During that period, there was a flood tide of favorable Confederate developments, and ultimately they collapsed. But not only was it in the military areas, but also in the political areas, espionage and diplomacy. A lot of this looks at what was going on in Great Britain in terms of possibilities for getting the Confederacy recognized as an independent country by Great Britain. And if they had, and if Lincoln and Seward did not acquiesce to it, how would they fight the federal union? So a lot of that's in here, okay? It's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, most any bookstore can get it for you if they don't have it. It's $28 list price. I'll sell personally my copies for $30 signed, and I'll pay postage here in the United States. Again, I want to let you know about causes of the Civil War. This book was specifically written to help provide those of you who are involved in trying to save our monuments the information you need, the explanations you need to refute the arguments against the monuments, specifically in terms of what caused the war. I'm going to bring up, let's see if I've got it here. I think I do, but let me just check. I want to bring up, I want to share this slide. It's not the one that I thought I had, but this is important. I want to share this slide, so let me start sharing it. When it comes to the monuments, what you see here is the blue are the Union monuments and the red are the Confederate monuments. Clearly, after the Civil War, the Confederacy people in the South were impoverished. They couldn't put up monuments. They put up a few. But it wasn't until about right after the Spanish-American War when the Union veterans finally realized that, the Southern veterans of the war were also Americans. And and their sons went into the Spanish-American War eagerly to help the United States win that war. That's when the Union veterans found, let them have their own memorials to their dads. And that started about 1898. About 80% of the signature courthouse statues in the South that went up between 1898 and 18. And the typical soldier, the typical rebel youth that was a young soldier, aged from, say, age 58 to age 78, or call it age 60 to age 80 during that period, they were fading away. That was the principal reason you saw this surge in red monuments. It didn't have anything to do with Jim Crow or white supremacy. That's complete nonsense. And if you look at it during the sesquicentennial or during the semi-centennial, even the blue monuments surged. There was a simultaneous surge, but a bigger one in the South because the South didn't have any money prior to about 1900. The per capita income in 1900 in the South was about half, was 51%. It was the South that was in the 51st percentile of national per capita income average. Now, what that means is, since it's part of the average, that the Northerners were even more, their per capita income was even more than double that of the South. So this surge in monuments during the early 20th century had nothing to do with white supremacy, notwithstanding what the Southern Poverty Law Center and notwithstanding what this guy who made his lecture was saying. So I'm glad I got a chance to present that. This graph is important. So I want to conclude with that. Now, a couple of things that I want to mention. If you want to buy the books from me personally, you can email me at Phil_Leigh, L-E-I-G-H, @me.com. Here in the United States, I'll pay the postage to get it to you. This one cost you $22 at Amazon. From me signed, it's $25. If you're in the United States, I cover the postage. This one at Amazon or Barnes & Noble is $28. If you buy it from me, it's $30 signed, and I cover the postage. This one is hardcover. This one is paper cover. So the last thing I want to mention is YouTube has a up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little bell. It's called the notification bell. If you click that, then what'll happen is every time I have a new video, you'll be notified. Okay, thanks for watching. I appreciate your attention, and thanks for your encouragement over the, when you put them in there in the remarks below. Thanks again, and goodbye.